Hello and welcome to this cyber show. My name is Pip Blake. I'm the Managing Director of a Disruptive Cyber Group. And today I'm joined by Jon France from ISC2, recently rebranded from ISC Squared, who will be discussing all things cyber with me. Jon, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Thanks very much. Yeah, my name's Jon France. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at ISC2.
Excellent. So, Jon, I know we sat down a couple of weeks ago, and discussed again lots of things. But something that came out of that discussion that I wanted to start with. You are obviously ISC2's first CISO. For those of you who do not know, ISC2's CISSP certification has been on a number of job specs, if not every job spec, when it comes to cybersecurity roles. And being the first CISO of that organisation, or I won't brand you the CISO of CISOs, but how has it been? What have been the challenges? And just run us through sort of a little bit about that role.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'd love to say it's been fun. It has genuinely been fun. I enjoy what I do, but it's also interesting, kind of being a CISO at a place that trains CISOs and upcoming CISOs. And you mentioned the CISSP. It's 30 years of CISSP this year, so it's been going a fair amount of time. I work a lot with, obviously, my peer group. Our board's made up of professionals, so conversing with them, I commonly joke, which is, it's kind of easy for me to talk to my board because they're my peer group. And they understand me, and I say, but it's kind of difficult, because they understand me. It's kind of a little bit of an in-joke, but it's great actually working for the profession and on behalf of the profession, and forwarding and developing not only existing cyber talent into leadership, but actually encouraging more people to come into this profession as well.
Yeah, excellent. And with those board meetings now, I imagine there will be a few large egos in there in terms of, or when you say sort of the outside influence with regards to CISOs, what goes into how they potentially influence your role. How do you deal with the fact that there's so many opinions and CISOs and that may be putting their opinions forward on that?
It's relatively easy because, like I said, they understand the landscape anyway. Yeah. So where there are differences of opinion, they tend to be in the positive sense, which is a discussion to what's the most important thing, rather than is something important in the world of cybersecurity. So in that respect, a little bit easier. But yeah, there are some strong opinions in there, and I bring my strong opinion as well, and it's a great conversation. I'm sure we'll get onto it, but there's some business conversations that go in there as well. Yeah. It's not just about the world of cybersecurity.
So what I imagine in terms of their recruitment process to acquire a CISO has to be incredibly robust, especially for an organisation like ISC2 or ISC Squared. Anyone who's been to any events recently, I'll just show my prop now. I've actually come prepared with my my ISC2 moleskin or equivalent. So. How obviously there's a huge following. So in terms of the recruitment process and onboarding yourself and obviously your background, how did maybe sort of dive a little bit into the background that you have and how that sort of prepared you for this particular role, given sort of the prominence of it?
Yeah, so my route is, you could say, fortunately, one of the more traditional routes. I'm an IT professional. I am a geek, not a nerd, so I like the term geek. But I came through the ranks of going through service desk, then into engineering on networks. I can code, but don't ask me to; it's painful. So it was on developing networks and services on that side. Then that was in a media company. Then through telecommunications, so I did quite a lot of work on. Internally first, and then on the association. We were as an association representing the industry. I worked on fraud and security, so did a lot on the 5G security evolution. And very fortunate through those periods to not just be exposed to technology, but also exposed to business. So that's probably one, I would say, if anyone's asking for advice on what skills to acquire to become a CISO, focus on your business skills. Your technical skills are probably there if you come through a traditional route like I did. It's your business skills and understanding the language of business and what threats are and risk are and return on an investment, all of those things. So I came through that route and then moved over to ISC2. The recruitment process, like any normal one, you get interviewed by lots of people. And some externals that ISC2 bringing in to sort of validate my experience and my approach. So, and I'm glad to say I achieved the position. So thanks to ISC2 for employing me and keeping me employed.
2 years in now, so
two and a little bit years in, my role is probably two big component parts. One is the traditional role of the CISO. Most people understand that, which is to protect the organisation from threat, wherever that comes from, external, internal, or alien, and also to advocate for the profession. So to represent a CISO and input into that. Or other CISOs and input into the organisation as a CISO, and then to advocate externally. So I work quite a lot with our advocacy arm to attend events, to go and talk, to engage, and importantly to really look at how do we encourage more people into this profession. Because we know we've got a workforce skills gap and a workforce shortage, and we know that traditional routes, the traditional IT route in whilst valuable, is under pressure in itself. So we've got to attract more people in, and that's talent. And I'll try and bust one myth, which is, entry level does not mean young. We absolutely love, and I absolutely love career changes, people that may have had another career or want to come into this profession and carry some of their experiences with them, can be incredibly valuable.
So there's a couple of items that we'll pull on there. So the advocacy part and obviously the business part. Let's start with the advocacy. I know IC2, you come out with the report every year in terms of the shortage, cyber skills shortage and the research which goes into it. Probably a good place. I think it's Dr. Sanjana, who's she sort of heads up your advocacy side of things, which I know she puts in a lot of work. I seem to see her everywhere.
Well, Sanjana's UK, a little bit of Europe. Tara Wisniewski is the EVP for advocacy.
Yeah.
But,
of course, and I imagine this is going out globally as well. But in terms of that advocacy piece, how important is that for ISC2 and the community side of things?
Incredibly important for a couple of reasons. One is you have to go and engage to understand the environment you're operating in. And we know that there are some fairly significant regulatory pressures arrived, not coming. They've already arrived around cybersecurity. We're starting to see regulation come to the fore. So in the US, you've got, the recent one that was discussed at RSA was CERCIA and reporting incidents and those kind of things. You've got executive orders on AI. And then you've got some of the rules and regs coming out of CISA. In Europe, you've got NIS2, DORA, and a bunch of others. In the UK, you've got the product security that's now coming into force. So you're starting to see regulation affecting cyber, and it's important, A, to understand that, so you've got to go and listen, and B, to influence it. We want smart, harmonised regulation for the industry. One of the toughest things to do if you're operating transnationally is to understand all the regulatory landscape and the requirements of it. So if they're more harmonised, GDPR is a good example. GDPR is now worldwide known. And if we can influence that and get sensible regulation onto the books, that helps our membership and it helps the profession. So going out, listening and influencing regulation as it comes through.
Well, interestingly, I know literally after we had our meeting at RSA, that very day I had a conversation with a couple of product engineers who sort of said, we're really struggling to navigate the European frameworks in terms of the regulations which are out there. I actually have given them your details, so that if someone reaches out to you, sort of saying, "Hey, can you help us with NIS2 with DORA?" You know who to blame. But that's and ultimately, I think one of the most difficult parts is sort of having that international audience and pulling everything in from those and sort of and catering to that audience. And on the business side of things, I know we didn't get to sort of. I think I was more interested in talking to you about Baby Bells than I was. There is ask either John or I about that. Not we won't go into it. We've only got half an hour for this particular show. But if you touch on the business side of things, how important has that been for you in understanding and relating to the C-suite with who you're engaging with, and just sort of dive into sort of that business understanding, because I see a lot of rhetoric, whether it's on LinkedIn or various other professional forums, about how there's this CISO position, the C-level position, but it's should it be part of the board because of sort of the business. It should be more aligned with business, and sort of we're taking maybe a technical individual and putting them on into a boardroom situation, which is less about bits and bytes and more about return on investment and cost and all those sorts of all the other sort of elements which come with that. So how has your business experience helped you in that regard?
So I think it's important to recognise that the language of business at senior levels is about those things like return on investment, risk to reward, the levers of business. So if you're going to be in a leadership position, you are leading the business. You're representing your function, but you're part of the leadership function in the business, whatever business you choose to be in. So you really should understand how your business or the business works, and be able to translate between the function you represent into that business speak. Because at board levels, the language transcends, the CFO, the CEO, the COO, any other the C, they talk similar language.
Yeah.
And you could argue that our profession is relatively young, but we're starting to make it into boardroom settings and senior leadership settings. And part of that is to actually use that language and to translate. So it's been incredibly useful to me. And my CEO said the other day, he says, you're a little bit unusual like a CISO because you don't talk techie. I understand techie, but I love business and looking at the levers. And a big word for that for me is risk. If you can have a sensible conversation about risk, not only about reducing risk, but about being able to say, look, we can afford to take a little more risk here, more than you think you can, because we can protect some of that downside. And that shows you're not just a department of no, you're a department of yes, potentially, or maybe. And you can really add to that. So incredibly useful. Actually, like I said earlier, one of the key skills is if you're going to make it into that, it's not about your technical skills, it's probably about your business skills. Yeah. So there's that blend. And unfortunately, we're seeing more people that are making it through that route.
Yeah.
And some of the regulatory pressure coming back to that is the SEC ruling in the US. They stopped short of sort of saying a CISO in the boardroom, but they wanted cyber skills definitely at a senior level.
Yeah.
And that for me in the US was a clarion call for we need to be present, even if it's not at the very top table. We need to be influencing the top table.
Of course. And in terms of that business side of things, with regards to that, do you think organisations at the moment are kind of getting it right with regards sort of that measure between business and security, or is there work to be done? And it's I know that's a reasonably difficult question to be. I fully expect a diplomatic answer.
The diplomatic answer, it depends. Some places are getting it right, some not. If we look in the news, there's still a lot of cyber attacks and breaches going on. So you could sort of say, oh, well, we're not getting it right as a profession. But I actually think we're getting it more right than wrong. Yeah. And it's a journey. We talk a lot about it's not an if, it's a when. And I loved at the conferences, it's now termed, you're either to the left of the bang or to the right of the bang. And again, part of being the business is like, we hope to prevent, but we know something's going to happen, so here's how we deal. and having that view and taking that into a senior leadership. One of the things I dislike hearing at senior levels is, how do I reduce that risk to zero? How do I absolutely prevent it? Well, it's not about that. It's about reducing it to an acceptable level. And in the context of your business, what's really important to us, protecting that, but knowing that actually sometimes things happen and it goes wrong, and how do you deal with the consequences, and we can talk technology around incident response and those kind of things, but the contextualization is, yes, I hope to prevent, but I also know how to deal.
Yeah. Well, I think what you've just mentioned there in terms of it's not an if, it's a when. And maybe more of a subjective opinion from yourself on this, in terms of dealing with those and the cyber attacks that we've seen. And I know we're sort of segueing a little bit from the business side of things, and more maybe towards response. But do you think, again, coming from that advocacy route and having the membership group that you do you think there's enough sharing around cyber attacks, around sort of how organisations respond? I know that there's I'll use the example of, I know that the British Library put out a fantastic piece which sort of detailed everything that happened, where they went wrong, etc. Just thought a few comments on that sharing piece.
It's a little bit of a trope, but they say cybersecurity is a team game, and it absolutely is. And part of being in a team is sharing, and in the profession sharing. Does it happen enough? Probably not. Is it happening more than it used to? Absolutely. If I just look across the landscape, the number of sharing centres, industry specific, has grown. We've also started to see some of that regulatory pressure. I mentioned CISO, that's a reporting law. We've got some of those coming through NIS2 and DORA. And what they're really aiming to do on the reporting front is not to stop, I'm going to call it, the infection of patient zero. It's about herd immunity, and if we can share what happened here quickly and widely, we can stop the contagion spreading. So there's an immediate benefit from sharing in the short term, and then in the longer term, I think it's about education and about bringing it up. The one big thing I will push is security is part of a business, or cybersecurity is part of a business, not a treatment to it. And if we get that mindset in there, and we start, building in sharing mechanisms and good community spirit, we'll be better for it.
Okay, and it's probably a good time to sort of move towards, obviously this show is about the future of cyber resilience, or certainly one of the elements of the title is. I think you're a fantastic person, given sort of the background that you come from, years in the industry, and the various organisations and certainly the industries that you have visibility of now, interacting or having that advocacy role with ISC2. So where, in terms of where we've come from as an industry, and in terms of where we're going to, what have you seen that you don't want to see again, and what have you seen that you would like to see more of? Obviously, I know we've just touched on the sharing piece, so that's probably going to be part of it. But
sharing is a part of it. What have I seen that I don't really like seeing? And that's the treatment too. We'll do X, Y, and Z, and then we'll put security over the top of it. Or we'll treat it at the end. Wrong way of doing it. We talk a lot about like DevSecOps and lifecycle management. I actually think security is in part of the business, it's in part of the product. It's being part of that journey of development. Love to see more of that, because it means we don't end up with some of the weaknesses at the sharp end. So that long-term prevention for me is building it in from the start. See more of that. Thank you very much. Where I've seen sort of threat evolve, threat actors have become more sophisticated. And you can say geopolitically and globally, the sort of threat mix is quite dynamic at the moment, from lots of elections going on, sort of fakes, deep fakes. You've got conflicts of various shapes and sizes that are having an effect, and then just the general sophistication of threat actors, and potentially state-backed actors is growing as well. And I think in our workforce study, there's the response said 75% response said it's the worst I've seen it in 5 years.
Yeah.
So definitely it's felt amongst the community. But equally, I think if we look at sharing, we look at some of the practices like good life cycle management, it's coming to treat some of those risks. And then we've got emergent technologies or emerged technologies being added into the mix. I can't get away without mentioning it.
You've got to say it.
I know. You know, sort of.
For a little bit of context for everyone listening, I don't think there was a stand or a conversation which did not mention AI at RSA, which is where John and I were. So we kind of have to say it. There is also an AI show which Disruptive Live run. So yeah, please go check that out if you are interested in AI. So a little bit of a shout out for that show. But sorry, John.
Yeah. So fortunately, you took the words out of my mouth, which is we looked at AI. It's emerged. You know, machine learning, deep learning has been around for a while. Public consciousness is now around large language model and generative. They've brought that world into sharp focus, I would say, and into the common consciousness. You know, it's either going to save the world or eat the world, and we're not sure which. And we've done some research on it. I think we got just shy of 1,200 respondents from the community. And the response from that was it offers us as a profession some great opportunity to use it. To improve signal to noise ratio, for instance. We swim in a world of data, and actually getting to the important bits, things like AI can help us, but it's also equipped the attacker as well. So it is a little bit of an arms race. At the moment, I think we're slightly in a bit of asymmetry. I think the attackers have this slight edge with AI. But we saw at RSA and other shows, the vendors are racing to use AI and everything. So that's I'm going to call it emerged technology. That is definitely affecting our landscape. And then we've got things like post-quantum compute relevant cryptography coming. Actually, I don't profess to understand the maths behind it, and I think I've said this before, but you know, that's wizards, witchcrafts, and warlocks that look after the magic. But we can definitely see impacts as it's, you know, a lot of security relies on asymmetric encryption. Many of those algorithms are quantum weak. So we've got a change problem coming, which is we've got to change to quantum safe cryptography. Fortunately, NIST has obviously run competitions. We've started to see the first cipher suites come out, and you know, it's an adoption thing, but it's everywhere. It's pretty much in every device you carry and every service you touch. And I think that's going to be our challenge in the next, depending on who you listen to, 2 years to 10 years. And it's a big change protocol. And change is not the technology is easy. You know, change this cipher suite for this cipher suite and you're safe. Practically doing that, you know, it's conceptually easy, practically hard. And then it's a business problem, which is convincing the business you need to do this. And actually, if we're building products now, can we build them quantum safe? So there's the business angle. You know, educate business. If we're doing this, we need to sort of look at the future.
And taking that sort of, we won't call it a prediction because otherwise someone may hold it to you. But in terms of obviously, IC2 have an amazing diversity of organizations that you have members in. So from your large, 10,000 plus organizations to those who are just, you know, maybe sort of small individual with a few employees. How does that? How is the adoption of you know, what's coming down the pipeline in cyber going to affect those? Or what's the adoption going to be like across the varying size of organization? Obviously, smaller organizations can be more dynamic, but don't necessarily have the funds, whereas the larger organizations have the funds, but aren't necessarily as dynamic as the smaller enterprises may be.
You're kind of touching on the agility argument here, which is smaller organizations can be more agile, but may not have the resources to do it. Larger organizations may have the resources, but it tends to be slower adopters. But if we actually just sort of pull back and say, well, and the workforce study reinforces this, we have a gap. Not only do we have just a capacity gap, I think it's around 4 million. You know, we can argue on whose survey's right, but it's in the millions, big. Actually, what we're tending to find now is the skills gap's becoming more prominent than the capacity gap, which is even when practitioners come into the market, they may not have the right and relevant skills to tackle. Most in-demand skills we're seeing is cloud. That's a little unsurprising. But then I'm going to mention it again, AI and ML is an in-demand skill that is not being satiated at the moment. So I think, you've got emerging technologies, you've got agility concerns, and then you've got a resource pool to try and plug those two things, but with a skills gap. So ISC2 is obviously educating in those areas and certifying. And for hiring managers, what we would say is, hire for critical skills like logical thought, critical thinking, problem solving, rather than empirical knowledge. Empirical knowledge can be taught. There is a commitment that you will teach it, and you will give the opportunities of employees to grow, but hire for propensity for skilling rather than for the knowledge. And if we can get that kind of shift going, which is, we lovingly call it job description abuse. I want an entry-level person to, paying £10,000 but wanting a CISSP. Those three things are not congruent. You say, well, actually, hire entry-level, commit to experience and commit to train, and they'll pay dividends back to you.
Well, I know ISC2 on that front. I know that there's the free sort of foundation certifications that you...
the 1 million certified in cybersecurity, the CC.
And I know that there's a number of initiatives, and certainly you guys are leading the way on that, or one of the organisations leading the way on that. And I know you touched on sort of having career changers who are bringing various ways of experience from other industries that can potentially pay dividends within cyber. So it's... Ultimately, when we're looking at that skills gap, and I think I've read every single one of the IRC2 reports. I think the first one I read way back when 2016, 17, I think it was. It was 1.2 million, a shortage of 1.2. So actually, although we've known about this and we've been addressing the issue, it is still grown. And if we just use the UK example, there's apprenticeships, there's career-changing boot camps. I know there's a lot of government funding towards those. There's still the university degrees. We have the NCSE certified degrees. And I know that IC2 are working with a number of those universities. I've seen your academia program growing extremely rapidly. So I know that there's a lot of work going in to try to solve that skills gap. But we're still seeing, and I know the organisations can't spring to mind. I know I've read a couple who have started sort of doing away with degrees as stipulation. I think I've seen a lot of rhetoric around we're asking for degrees, but actually at the entry level, maybe we should be employing people pre-degree levels. So in terms of gaining a little bit more traction on that entry level, where are those? You mentioned cloud. You mentioned some of the ML and AI. Are those sorts of skills incorporated into those sort of early learning foundation courses that IC2 have been looking to train 1 million people in?
I think with the certified in cybersecurity, it's 5 core domains, so it's basic principles. So it won't touch on AI and ML, for instance, but we lovingly sort of say, if you're cyber curious, come and take the CC. It's no prior experience required. It's a free online training course with an exam and a certification. You can become a member. Come and join the community. You might find it's not for you, but you might find it really is for you. You're absolutely right. College degree not required. So that's kind of one of the other myths that we're trying to bust.
Of course.
But the 1 million in CC really is open to anyone and everyone. It's post-education, but sort of in its aims. But it's really to test if you've got some, the ability to learn, and then to operate some of that critical thought and carry it into some of the entry-level positions. We're starting to see it pop up on job descriptions as well, which is great. It's affirming that it is valuable as much as it is trying to attract people into the profession.
As long as it's not next to the CISP.
Yes, that is true.
Maybe someone's not done their homework if that's the case. Well, it's great that ISC2 are doing their bit to sort of help populate and close that skills gap. Hopefully, we're going to start seeing as those as your research continues, see that gap close?
You're right. We're adding more people into the profession. Way more than we've ever added collectively, not just IC2 but others. But unfortunately, that gap is accelerating a little bit away from us. So
Yeah.
we have to double down our efforts. But we've made some very, very strong strides and continue to make more. But yes, we do have to close the gap.
Well, I know we're coming probably to the end of our show now. So I always like to give the opportunity to the guests to bring up some of their agenda items, maybe sort of mention a little bit about sort of what ISC2 is currently up to, or
we've got a little bit of a shameless plug. If you want to go and do a workshop in AI, we have some AI workshops. They're on our website. They're physically located but moving around the globe. But yeah, we'd love to see you. We'd love to have a conversation about all things cyber. I'd love to have a conversation about cyber and business. So come and tap me up. My pet subjects are AI and ML. Sorry, and post quantum relevancy. So.
Are you trying to be recruited for the AI show next?
No, not. Happy to talk about it. A bit like the quantum stuff. I kind of get some of the concepts, but I like talking about the impacts.
Great.
But yeah, so that's us and IC2. Let's collectively work together and get more people into this profession.
Awesome. Jon, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you very much to Disruptive Live for hosting us. I've been Pip Blake, and you guys have been beautiful. Please join us next time.